And now, more of the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show, live Wednesday, October 23rd. Now in studio, the one, the only Midwin Charles, attorney, radio, legal analyst, civil trial and criminal defense attorney at Midwin Charles and Associates, contributor to Essence Magazine. You see her all the time on MSNBC. She's right here. Hey, Midwin.
Hey, how are you?
Are you live streaming? She's
Instagram.
She's Instagram live right now. So, Midwin, let's talk about some of the legal stuff going on here. Today, Trump's lawyer argued in the Federal Court of Appeals, and it's the case where, and we've covered the case, where there was subpoena served by the Manhattan DA on Mazur, his financial accounting firm, to try to get documents, and Trump said, no, and the district court said, yeah. Now they're before the Second Court of Appeals, and I got to play it, folks. You're going to actually hear the judge talking to Trump's lawyer, William Consovoy, and the idea of shooting someone on Fifth Avenue comes up here. It's stunning. Here's clip number 3, please.
Your position, as you said a moment ago, is that the immunity is absolute. Yeah, and so if the president were to commit a crime, no matter how heinous, whether he did it before he took office or whether he did it after he took office, he could not be the subject of any even investigation. That's the position?
Yes, until, of course, Congress retains the impeachment power. And on the other side of impeachment, as the text of the Constitution makes clear, the president, like all other citizens, is subject to the laws and jurisdiction of states and the federal government alike. The question before the court.
The premise is that
I think it has to.
What's your view on the Fifth Avenue example? Local authorities couldn't investigate. They couldn't do anything about it.
I think once a president is removed from office, any local authority. This is not a permanent immunity.
Well, I'm talking about while in office.
No,
that's the hypo. Nothing could be done. That's your position.
That is correct.
So Donald Trump's lawyer literally argued in federal court before a panel today that you should not only not be able to indict a president, but you can't even investigate him. Because that's how far above Trump is above the law.
Right.
But in the reality is he's trying to seem reasonable that, well, it's only while he's in office. But evidence disappears. If you can't investigate,
Right.
say if Trump went out and shot someone tomorrow,
Right.
and they're going to argue you can't even investigate, that means the police can't take statements now.
Right.
They can't write, they can't make police reports, they can't do anything pertaining to the crime because it's technically an investigation of Trump. So what's your gut reaction first at the headline here? Trump lawyers saying you should not even be able to investigate the king.
Well, I'm not surprised, right? I mean, this is a sort of ongoing theme that we have seen from this administration from the very beginning, right? And one of the reasons why Donald Trump wanted Bill Barr to be his attorney general is because Bill Barr wrote a memo, right, during the Mueller investigation and questioned whether or not the investigation should even be taking place. Why? Because Bill Barr has this sort of idea that the president is king and that the executive branch ought not to be sort of investigated or, checks and balances. Like they're basically immune from everything. And as you can see, it's a very, very dangerous premise because the framers of the Constitution decided that we would have this system of checks and balances. There are 3 branches of government and they are co-equal. What does that mean? They all are on equal footing. One is not higher than the other. They each serve a particular role in our justice, in our democracy. As you could see,
right.
In the judiciary is the third leg, right? And so you saw this judge during colloquy, during this oral argument, asking that question. And I'm sure people are like, that's absolutely ridiculous if you think about it, because that would be the one most dangerous person in the United States of America, is the person who could escape persecution. And you're right about this idea of not being able to investigate. I had a deposition today. I took a deposition today, and, you always want to make sure that you can ask questions as soon as something happens, right? You don't want to wait years, and then the person can say, well, I don't recall, and it's reasonable for them to not recall if it's been a couple years. So I thought it was interesting in that argument that the lawyer representing, was it DOJ, I think it was making this argument, said, well, there's always impeachment powers of Congress,
Well, I think this,
right?
This may have been private counsel. It's Trump attorney, so it's not DOJ.
Okay, so it's not DOJ, so it's private counsel. But you saw how they said, well, there's always the power of impeachment, which is what you see playing out right now on the Hill. We won't even get into the
We'll talk about the craziness.
kerfuffle that happened, the nonsense that happened today. But it's interesting that they would make that argument that impeachment is a way to rein in a president, and yet we are having these hearings right now marching towards impeachment, and you see Donald Trump doing everything to obstruct justice.
If the framers wanted the president to be the only person in America who could not be criminally charged while they're in office, they would have put that in the Constitution.
And
it's a very simple thing.
Listen.
It's a simple thing to add.
That's what I've been saying from day one.
Midwin's been saying that since day one,
From
folks.
day one. I said on MSNBC, I said on Joy Reid's show, if the framers intended for him, for or her, right, for
One
her,
day,
him
exactly.
or her, hopefully one day soon.
Right.
If they intended for the president to be above the law, they would have said so. Not only is it not in the Constitution, the Supreme Court has not decided on this issue. So the idea that we have this OLC opinion memo sitting in the Justice Department, it's just a memo.
Right.
It's a memo. It's a policy.
I write memos.
Right.
Why isn't my memo not important?
It's a policy. And now with this presidency, we see how dangerous it is. I think before this presidency, I don't think that we've ever encountered a scenario where it would even come up, right? But now you have this president who in the very beginning talking about, well, if I shot somebody on the street on Fifth Avenue, they still would support me. Who says that, first of all?
Crazy people.
Right, but
Sociopaths.
But I digress. But the idea that we even have to contemplate this, that we even have to contemplate, that a president would commit an act so heinous while in office is frightening. And it ought to wake people up. Wake up.
And, as yourself as a practicing attorney, would you go into court and make this argument if it was not okay with your client to advocate this way? You would talk to your client and say, hey, here's the argument I make.
Right.
And the client goes, no, don't do that.
Right.
And my point is, Trump is cool with the idea of I'm above the law. Go in there and tell him you can't investigate me.
But listen, let me tell you something about Trump. Trump does and says just about everything in the open, in plain sight. He always is saying that he's above the law. And how does he say it? He says it. I am above the law. And he says it with respect to how the press covers him. He doesn't want the press saying things about him. He calls them enemy of the state. Why? Because they don't agree with him, because they report on exactly what he says and does. And somehow he believes he's above that level of scrutiny, because he's someone who came from the private sector. He's never worked in government. He doesn't understand the concept of transparency. That's what makes us a democracy, right? And that's why it's so important for the press to put a spotlight on what is happening. And so it's fascinating to me that he is always saying that he's above the law, right? Mm-hmm. He fired Comey because of the Russia thing, not recognizing that that's clearly obstruction of justice. So the idea that there is oversight, the idea that there is transparency, which are two things that make our democracy strong. Let's not forget that. They are integral. Transparency and oversight by Congress is what makes our democracy strong. Could you just imagine if Dems didn't win the House in 2018?
Oh my gosh, we would not have any conversations. Trump would just be doing whatever he wants.
Well, he would continue robbing us blind.
Right. And the reason this lawyer is making this argument, folks, is because the DA in Manhattan simply served a subpoena on Trump's accounting firm. Not even Trump. And Trump was not a party to this. This is a subpoena. Trump got his lawyers, hired them to go to court and tell his accounting firm, no, you can't give these documents up. So Trump does not even want the DA of Manhattan, who's investigating potential criminality of Donald Trump, dealing from the hush money payment, to even be able to investigate the guy. And ultimately, Trump wants to be able to skate from any crimes he's committed. Look about his whole life.
Right.
He's gotten away with, I've talked about on the show, lobbying violations in 2000 with Roger Stone, to being able to discriminate against African Americans, renting against them, didn't pay any fine for that, just entered a consent order with the DOJ. Trump has been able to skate for everything. So this is who he is. And so it's not surprising.
No.
Now, what do you make of today, the angry white mob that went to Congress today?
And I tweeted about this on my way here. One thing you have to give Republicans is they sure know how to do outrage. They really do. Like, they know how to pound the fist on the table, and we are outraged. I mean, they were outraged when Obama put on a tan suit. They were outraged when, Obama had Beergate with Skip Gates, at the White House. They were outraged when he put mustard on his burger. They were outraged when he ate. I mean, just outrage, always, always outrage. Now, if Dems could just get a little bit of that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Just a fraction of it. Just a fraction of it,
Right. So the response, and we were discussing it when people called in, Adam Schiff, the House Intel chair, said he didn't want to call the Capitol Police on them because he was fearful that's what they wanted. They wanted more press to be martyrs. But then you've got right now, a letter just came out a short time ago from Benny Thompson, who's the chair of the Homeland Security Committee, to Sergeant of Arms going, tell them don't do this again. It's a breach of security, a violation of the oath of all members, and we need you to ensure this doesn't happen again.
Right.
To the Sergeant of Arms. At the very least, they should be told, you do this again, you're getting arrested. I think they should arrest at least one. I think they should have sprayed one in the face with mace.
Right.
Like Matt Gaetz. You spray Gaetz in the face, and then you go, okay, who's next? Where's Mark Meadows? Why are you guys running? Where's everyone running for?
Right. Now I kid when I talk about outrage. I am not sanctioning what they did here because it's very important, right? I mean, it's a very serious thing because apparently this was a SCIF hearing, and a SCIF hearing is a very highly security sort of
classified
setting. So you're not allowed to go in with your phone. You're not allowed to go in with any recording devices. And apparently, not only they sort of march in there, they came in with telephones and recording devices and cell phones and things like that, which is a huge breach of security. I mean, it's really, really huge. I know people who work in government. I know when they go into SCIF, you can't get in touch with them for 10, 12 hours straight. Like, that's it. Like, not even allowed to be on their person.
No texting.
No, it's totally off. It's totally
Twitter,
off.
No Tinder, nothing, folks. Just
Absolutely not. And it is to protect us. It's to keep us safe. And so, again, you see a group of people behaving in a way that does not keep us safe, that does not think of the greater good for all American people, by doing that. But I will tell you, the outrage aspect of it is what the Democrats needed. I saw Ellie Mistal's tweet earlier, like, that's the kind of outrage we needed with Merrick Garland. Like, Democrats need to, like, dial it up. Just dial it up. You know what I mean?
So what do you think the Democrats should have done in response? Do you think arresting any of them would have been a good idea?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they need to stop worrying about how things look and stop worrying about what the response may be and just do. Because whether they do or don't, they will be damned, right? When Mitch McConnell told Obama that he was not going to put out a bipartisan statement about Russia interference, okay? And Obama didn't do it. Guess who, a few years later, is saying, well, Obama should have warned the American public about Russian interference? Guess who? Republicans.
Yep.
And so that's why you cannot, if someone does not operate in good faith, you can't trust them. And you have to just always do what is right. You can't worry about what their response may be to what you do, because Republicans never sit around and worry and wonder about what Democrats will do in response to the things that they do. Do you really think Matt Gaetz cared about what the Democrats might do when they bum rushed that hearing? Hell no. Absolutely not. And Democrats have to stop doing that. Stop second guessing. Stop worrying. Just act.
Matt
They
Gaetz
have power.
and his
Use
GOP,
it.
what they only care about is how it's going to play for their base.
Yeah.
And they know it's red meat. They know CNN. I mean, Fox News is going to have them on. Matt Gaetz is auditioning daily for a show, apparently, the way he goes on there.
Right. And
so
you make
all
a
they
good
care about is
point.
their base.
But you make a good point about how they care about how things look to their base. But do Dems do that? Do Dems care about how things look to their base? No. They worry about what the Republican reaction will be and how will it be seen, and we want to be seen as bipartisan, and we are we're worried, we're scared. And what was the term? I think it was David Axelrod after Rep Tlaib said impeach the MF. He was like, oh, this is not the proper tone. And, the tone police came out. And, I'm like, what? People, wake up. Wake up, yo.
I like when Rashida said that. I know Rashida, so I like that very much. And by the way, this hypocrisy of the right saying things like, these hearings behind closed doors, they should be in public. Well, I read earlier, Trey Gowdy, when he was then chair of the Benghazi Committee, had almost all of the hearings behind closed doors saying the private ones always produce better results, and pushing back against Democrats who wanted to go public, saying these are the rules and this is what you have to follow. But now the same mindset of these conservatives, they ignore that. They don't care. This shaming them is only for us. It's only for us to keep our sanity to go, these guys are just full of shit. I mean, they're just liars.
Right. And that's the thing, I'm always a big believer if you're not consistent, you're not credible. So if you thought that Bill Clinton should be impeached for lying under oath about an affair he had, and you believed that honor and integrity is what a president should have and embody, then if you don't see that here with this president, then you were not credible when you wanted Clinton to be impeached. So the Lindsey Grahams, the people who were there 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and who said, long time, and we can talk about term limits another time, but, with the same exact Lindsey Graham and so many others were really, really apoplectic about having Bill Clinton be impeached. And we can argue about whether he should have or shouldn't have, but the arguments that they made, and I urge everyone to kind of Google and go back and look at what the arguments were from Lindsey Graham and so many others who are still around now supporting the impeachment of Donald Trump, and the words that they use, the language that they use about what is the appropriate conduct of a president, how a president is a leader and a president is someone that everybody should follow and everybody should embody. And so the idea that those same people who said those same things are turning a blind eye to some of the most egregious abuses of power that we've seen, egregious, obstruction of justice from the president of the United States, is just mind-boggling. But it shows us that they are not credible. That they are not credible.
But they're not credible to us, but they're credible to their base. Because everything to them is their base. That's the only thing. They sit around going, will this make Fox News happy? Will this get me on Fox and Friends or Hannity or Tucker Klansman? But let's take a quick break. We'll come back more with our friend Midwin Charles after this.
Sure.
We'll take a quick break. welcome back to the Obi Dollar Show. We're live here with our friend Midwin Charles, attorney.
It's only a matter of time before Trump will Manafort him and be like, I don't know him.
Right.
I don't know him. That ain't my boy. I don't know him. Who? Giuliani who?
After you did that to Michael Cohen, like no one is safe.
Right.
Because Manafort wasn't his close friend for a long time.
Right, but he
Cohen
ran his
was.
campaign, remember?
Right.
And they were like, oh, he really did play an important
He just had coffee one day.
I'm
and
like, he
walked
was
through-
the campaign manager. What are you talking about?
But with Michael Cohen, if there's a hint that Rudy might flip or work with the prosecutors, these things, I think Rudy... There's more and more reporting that Rudy apparently is under investigation in Southern District. It's just reporting.
It's just reporting.
It would seem, though,
Well,
reasonable
if
to
his-
believe his buddies are
Right. Well,
indicted.
if his two partners or business partners or people that he's done work with are under investigation, it's only a matter of time, right?
Because they're in the same business.
They're
It's
in the
not-
same
It's not like
business.
the guy had some contract
Yeah,
with them and Rudy just hung out with them. They were
Same
in the
business
same...
and working on the same clients.
Yeah.
Right. Working on this, had the same clientele, which means that they probably had a lot of communications together. They probably were at the same meetings, and we've seen since those two were arrested in quite dramatic fashion at the airport, a lot of pictures have surfaced of these men with Rudy together on private planes and fabulous steak dinners. So it's only a matter of time, I think, that the inquiry will sort of move into and encapsulate Giuliani.
It was interesting when the story first broke with those guys getting arrested. The timeline, something was askew to me because it said they only got to know Giuliani in late last year. But the weird for years, I'm like, the money that flowed to these guys to give to this congressman and the super PAC, I bet you Rudy's fingerprints are on that. So that's when I'm like, game changer, because all those pictures show the timeline was not the way it was first reported. He didn't just meet these guys and get to know them last summer. He knew them before. So I feel like they went to meet with that congressman and to get rid of the ambassador to Ukraine. Because Rudy and Trump are all involved. This is a crime family. It's
so much self-dealing. It's so much what I think should bother most Americans. Like, and I like when people can sort of just explain things like, why is this bad? Because it's back channeling foreign policy. At the end of the day, we have a process in our democracy where we elect people, and we elect people to appoint people to positions.
Right.
And some of the appointments have to be confirmed by the Senate. And we do that so that we know who is running things. Those people get a security clearance, and those people, are responsible for providing information, all that kind of stuff. And it's supposed to go through proper channels.
Right.
But when you have this sort of backdoor, secret, back channeling foreign policy, all the bets are off in terms of how it's done and who is it benefiting. Remember, the whole reason why Congress appropriated that aid for Ukraine is because they recognized that Ukraine was under attack by Russia.
Yeah, exactly.
And Congress recognizes that Russia is our enemy. So what are we doing? We are helping the Ukraine, which is our ally. So this idea that Trump would get his private attorney, not an ambassador, not someone who's been appointed, not someone who's been elected, to handle this for him outside of the auspices of government, outside of the sort of rules and regulations that people who work in government have to follow so that they can be held accountable for the things that they do, is incredibly dangerous. What other countries is he back channeling forendi for this administration? Like, what else are they doing?
I had Congressman Andre Carson on last night, who's on the House Intel Committee, who talked about the Sharon. Money comes over.
Right.
And also Gordon Sondland, who's the ambassador who gave $1 million to Trump to get his job.
Instinctively, that Rudy is not in the White House.
Right.
Rudy was not elected. Rudy was not appointed. Like, Rudy is random personal lawyer on
Twitter.
On Twitter at Midwin Charles, on Instagram at Midwin, and Facebook Midwin. Although I might be deleting that in light of today's
Mark
conversation.
Zuckerberg?
Yeah, he's
It's-
creepy.
If I didn't need Facebook to distribute my articles and promote my
Right.
show, I don't think I would use
or
Facebook
keep
anymore.
in touch with people I went to school with and family who live
I don't-
outside of New York.
I don't need friends. I just need to promote my articles and my show. But no, you're right, because I'm so troubled.
It's kind of troubling.
Midwin, great chatting with my friend. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So nice of you to come in. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Be back right after this with Naveed Jamali, our friends, right after this.